What's up everyone, Laz here again with thematani.com. Today I'm bringing another how-to video on World of Warships, and we're going to be talking about commander skills. We'll be going over the skills themselves as well as some of their uses. Starting at Tier 1. At the top of the skills tree you see Tier 1, there's 5 skills. At the top of the skills tree you have 5 Tier 1 skills. Starting from the left you have Expert Loader. At first glance this skill looks amazing, but wait! Don't get fooled by the big text. Look at the small text above it. You only get this buff when all of your main guns are loaded. When switching ammo types, you want to fire the loaded rounds before changing, or you waste the potential damage of those loaded rounds. Don't touch this skill as a cruiser or destroyer. However, I can see some possible strategic uses of this skill for battleships, but very limited uses. AKA, probably stay away from it altogether. Second from the left is basic fire training. You can feel safe in taking the large text at face value when you look at this skill. One of the questions raised by the skill is, does this only apply to secondary armament? The answer is no. All 155mm and below artillery benefits from this skill. Therefore, all destroyers and some cruisers like the Cleveland do get a bonus from this skill. I am torn between this skill and the next skill, Basics of Survivability, as the best skill in the tier for battleships, cruisers, or carriers. With that being said, third from the left we have Basics of Survivability. It gives a 15% reduction in time to repair, extinguish fires, and stop flooding. It is an extremely effective skill to assist when your damage control party is on cooldown, or for the times you know you need to hold on to it for later use. You can pair this skill with the Damage Control Systems 2 upgrade if you feel your ship doesn't require the Steering Gears 2 modification. This skill is still useful on its own. This skill, as you can see in the short video clip, pops up an emblem showing when your ship has been detected by the enemy. There are 2 icons for this skill. One is just an exclamation mark, and the second is an exclamation mark with a plane next to it, indicating that you were detected by an aircraft. This skill is great for destroyers and also marginally useful for Imperial Japanese Navy cruisers attempting to sneak up and deliver its payload of torpedoes. Last on Tier 1 is Expert Rear Gunner. This skill gives a 10% boost to the rear gunners of any planes with a rear gunner, like a torpedo bomber for example. From what I've been told, this skill isn't worth the point to use instead of Basics of Survivability or Basic Fire Training. Moving on to Tier 2, starting at the right again, we get to the Aiming Expert. This skill buffs the rotation time on main armament. This skill is particularly useful for ships with slow rotation times like the Tiers 5, 6, and 7 US battleships or the Furitaka. Second skill from the left on Tier 2, we have Torpedo Armament. This skill gives a 10% bonus to the rearming time of torpedo tube and torpedo bombers. This is a must-have for your destroyers and carriers. It can be beneficial for IJN cruisers, however these 2 points are better spent in the next skill, Fire Prevention. Fire Prevention is a major commander skill in the current meta where HE is commonly used across most cruisers and destroyers. I've used Fire Prevention since the launch of Open Beta and I have gotten noticeably less fires throughout each match. I recommend this skill for battleships, cruisers, and carriers. However, I feel that destroyers can make a choice between fire prevention and torpedo armament expertise. And to close out Tier 2, we're going to have Incoming Fire Alert. This skill displays a warning if artillery is fired at you with a flight time of more than 6 seconds. This skill is nearly useless. Please don't waste points in it. As you play more games, you'll gain experience and you'll find it's very hard not to know when someone is firing at you. If you want to know if you're going to be shot at, you can also zoom in on an enemy ship and see if their turrets are facing you. You never want to drive in a straight line, always zigzag and increase and decrease speed randomly whenever you're entering an engagement. Kicking off Tier 3 we have High Alert. This skill knocks off 10% of the reload time for the damage control ability. It doesn't sound like much, but those 6 to 10 seconds can mean a lot when you're burning to death with 1,000 hit points left. I would take this skill on cruisers pre-Tier 9. The next skill, Vigilance, gives a 20% increased acquisition range on torpedoes. This skill isn't very useful as when you're fighting destroyers or other torpedo boats, you can watch that ship's torpedo tubes to see when they launch. The best way to counter torpedoes is to manipulate your ship's speed and direction constantly. Also, it is best in most cases to turn into said torpedoes. Next up, Dogfighting Expert. It's an interesting skill that will help you grind up the carrier tiers. It gives a bonus to the attack power of your fighters if they are slower, only if they're slower, than the enemy fighters. This is a very good skill to pick up for the starting US Navy carriers to compete against the faster IJN fighters at lower tiers. It becomes personal preference in higher tiers if you decide to keep this skill. Last skill in Tier 3 is probably the best skill on the row for most classes of ships. It is the Superintendent Skill. It gives you an extra charge on all consumables mounted to your ship. For example, smoke screen on destroyers, or the repair capability on battleships and high-tier cruisers. You'll take this on everything except carriers. Tier 4 starts off with the Demolition Expert. With this skill, you gain a 3% increased chance of fire. This skill is most useful for high rate of fire ships like the Atlanta, Mogami, Cleveland, Des Moines, Gearing, etc., etc. You get the point. This skill also applies to armor-piercing rounds. Personally, I would stay away from this skill even on those ships, as other skills in this tier are better. Second skill in Tier 4 is Advanced Firing Training. It gives a 20% to the range of all 155mm and below guns, as well as 20% increase to your anti-aircraft range. This skill can be especially useful on cruisers like the Atlanta, which with this ability goes from a 11.1 km to 13.3 km range. The next skill, Last Stand, competes with Advanced Firing Training for me. I currently play cruisers, so the benefits of both really shine. Last Stand makes it so when your steering or engine is critically damaged, you can still maneuver but with a penalty. The skill is required for destroyers, hand downs, end of story. With how susceptible they are to getting knocked out with HE rounds, you should definitely get this skill. Carrier Captains, this next skill is for you. It is the only commander skill that you'll want to get 100% of the time. Aircraft Servicing Expert gives a much needed 5% survivability buff to aircraft and a 10% reduction in aircraft servicing time. 0 downsides to this ability. Tier 5 is where things get complex, with some of the skills more useful than others when paired with other abilities or upgrades. The first Tier 5 ability under the artillery tree is Last Chance. It offers a 9% reload time buff when your ship is below 20% HP. You no longer fight, the save seconds will add up while you're sitting below 20% health. And this skill could be particularly useful when paired with rate of fire upgrades. I'll have to do some more testing, but as of right now, I feel the second skill in Tier 5 is a much better point investment. Preventive Maintenance gives a 34% reduction to the chance of module incapacitation. This skill helps prevent needing to use your damage control party consumable to repair modules and allow you to save it to put out fires or stop flooding. It is also a reduction in the incapacitation of your guns, which can mean your death in the middle of a brawl. Also, a quick side note, however, this does not affect the destruction chances of a turret. Now, Concealment Expert. This skill increases the concealment of each ship class by varying percentages. This skill provides some interesting gameplay possibilities when combined with a 10% concealment ship upgrade. If you have a spare high-level captain or want to spend some gold respecking, this could be an extremely effective skill. For all the carrier captains out there, this skill is pretty massive. It adds +1 aircraft to all squadrons. This skill increases the DPS and longevity of a squadron and can be combined with dogfighting to give a considerable buff to the slower IJN fighters at higher tiers. The last skill in the commander skill toolbox is Jack of all trades, giving a 10% buff to the reload time of all mounted consumables, meaning your damage control, party, smokescreen, repair, and other ship abilities are available 10% faster. This could be useful in some situations, but I feel there are better options in this tier. Now that we've gone over the skills, you can use this information to go ahead and plan ahead for your skills in each tier. Don't let this video dissuade you from mixing and matching to figure out which skills work best for your playstyle. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please be sure to like the video and comment down below. Also, make sure you subscribe to our channel so that you can get information on all of our upcoming how-to videos.